A griffin is a fictional being with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle, used symbolically in the military to denote strength, courage, and leadership. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Creature Spotlight, a series where we go through the many different aspects of the creature in the spotlight. Today, specifically, we'll be talking about how to tame it, what abilities it has, and some pro griffin tips and strategies. If you want to grow your skills and all sorts of other ARC-related stuff, subscribe now so you don't miss anything. Before we get into the video, did you know I have 2 server clusters dedicated to the community? They don't cost anything to play on, and I film all my videos on them. There's a PvP cluster with Ragnarok and Aberration, and a PvE cluster with Crystal Isles and Aberration. These are the best places for you to practice everything you've learned, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean that experienced players can't join. The clusters are PC only for the time being, with weekly events you can participate in for pretty awesome rewards. If you want to sign up, just join the Discord using the link in the description and head to server sign up to sign up. So in order to tame a griffin, you'll have to knock it out. I recommend using a trap for that, and I actually have 2 to show you today. The first trap is essentially the Argentavis trap, but instead of using it for an Argy, you'll use it for a griffin. This trap is 3 dino gateways and 2 dino gates, with a gap large enough for a pteranodon to fly through. Simply aggro the griffin, lead it into the trap, land the Terra, and run around to close the gate. This is the cheapest, most available trap I could think of, considering you might already have 1 or 2 of these near a griffin spawn. The second trap is much more expensive, but far easier to use in my opinion. It consists of 6 foundations, 18 door frames, 6 ceilings, 6 pillars, and a dino gate. Simply fly the pteranodon through, land at the back of the trap, and run around to close the gate. The reason that I like this personally is because you just fly this pteranodon straight through. You don't, no fuss, no worry, hop off, he's still aggroed on the pteranodon. And now that these doors are out, oh my god, you just close it. Oh. And then you have all these holes to shoot it through. It does have a little bit more space. Anyway, once you've gotten the griffin into the trap, you're gonna have to knock it out. We're taming a level 150 here, and for that you'll need at least 68 trank darts, or at least 34 shocking trank darts if you have those available to you. I don't recommend using a crossbow for this one because the griffin has a 13% chance of dying during the knockout process. The griffin has a super high torpor drain of 7.4 torpor per second, meaning you'll need at least 220 narcotics on official sightings to keep it knocked out if you're using raw mutton. The griffin's favorite food, of course, is extraordinary kibble, needing only 11 for official and reducing narcotic usage to only 75. I strongly recommend taking the time to use either kibble or mutton, simply to save yourself hundreds of narcotics and lots of time. I feel like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you to take the time to find the highest level griffin out there. Griffins are not breedable, so the stats it has are the stats it'll always have, other than level ups, of course. Getting a high level griffin will almost always get you good stats, so be really patient with this guy. Take the time. Now that taming is out of the way, let's talk about the griffin's abilities. I think the ability that's the most useful for me is the dive ability. The griffin is capable of using gravity to accelerate itself to some pretty high speeds. Just hold sprint, point down, and pull back up to utilize the speed you've just gained. Keep in mind you can't be holding anything while you're doing this, otherwise the griffin just straight up won't dive. It's got 4 attacks: the claw, the dive bomb, the diving swipe, and the grab. The claw is the griffin's primary attack, and its hitbox is a full 360 degrees around it, meaning that the Casteroides at the beaver dams don't stand a chance if your griffin has enough melee damage. The dive bomb is triggered when you hit the ground head on while the griffin is diving. This damages all creatures in the griffin's immediate area, which is pretty useful for dealing with small groups of dinos that are clustered together. The diving swipe is a pretty amazing attack that can deal
a base damage of 188.
This means that the griffin is essentially a master of guerrilla warfare, or hit and run tactics. Dive in, hit the target, swoop out. You're like a dive bomber from World War II, but on a flying mythical beast, which is pretty badass if you ask me. Lastly, the grab attack allows the griffin to pick up creatures as big as a Megalanian. The griffin allows a passenger to ride along with you, as well as allowing you and your passenger to utilize weaponry while mounted. This is useful for taming creatures that you don't want to build a trap for, but definitely don't want to die from, especially considering that the griffin has really nice movement that allows you to lean forward, back, left, or right. You might see me utilize this precise movement when I'm building high up or in awkward places. Alright, cool, so we know the Griffin basics, but now I have 5 pro tips and uses for the Griffin. Sometimes when you're traveling, you might find that you get a little low to the ground or close to the water, and you have to slowly climb your way back up into the sky to be able to dive again. If you dive and pull up to about a 45-degree angle, you'll actually be able to regain some of the height you lost during the dive and maintain a faster, more steady flight without risk of hitting the water. Secondly, Griffin combat is best utilized with boom and zoom tactics, like the dive bomber from World War II I mentioned earlier. This can be really confusing for enemies stuck on the ground depending on how fast you can get in and get out, and confusing your enemies is a tremendous advantage for you in the end. I have to note that the Griffin shouldn't be your primary choice for combat though. Its stats overall are pretty average, and its abilities should only be used in emergencies or if you know you can win a fight. Next, the Griffin isn't exactly the best for dogfights since it has such a poor turning radius, but escape is almost always an option with the Griffin. If you're able to create enough space between you and the flyer you're fighting, you might be able to get a diving swipe in to deal loads of damage. Griffin combat can be exceptionally difficult. You'll need to be an excellent pilot to fight well with a Griffin. Next, while dismounting from the Griffin, you stand on its neck instead of hopping all the way off like you would on a pteranodon. This can be used to quickly loot a beaver dam or steal wyvern eggs. Overall, it's super useful and can even be used in the air. Just be careful though, because if you're too close to the ground, the Griffin will try to land, leaving you in a very scary spot. Lastly, Griffins are used for traveling and scouting. PvP often comes down to who has more information, so using the Griffin to figure out who is where can be really advantageous to you. It's useful to use a Griffin for scouting because scuffles may occur during your scouting, and using a Griffin will give you many options for dealing with the encounter. Okay, so for those of you that like to compare the Griffin to the snow owl, I did some research and want to give you my thoughts. The snow owl is better in every way and the Griffin is a bitch.